Hello, everybody. So, this is my first live stream here on YouTube. So, I'm super excited to be here with you guys. So, I normally do this in my Facebook, my private Facebook coaching group, which, if you've watched any of my videos, I've mentioned it to you guys. So, if you're not familiar with that, I really encourage you to jump in over there and join in the discussion. And I think I actually have a little preview for you here. Um, so this is my Facebook group where you can ask member questions, and we just have a good old time in there. So anyway, and the link to the Facebook coaching group will be in the description here um, of the live. So I'd love for you to come over and join. And as I'm also waiting for you guys to hop on, I also wanted to just point you to the website, which you can look at my channel here. The website link is here. And so if you want to find out a little bit more about the coaching program, and if you're looking for private coaching or other types of things, you can actually hop on over there. Um, and there is a link here to private coaching. This is myself and our other coach, Debbie King, and you can find out all sorts of information, cool information about spectrum relationships over on the website. So this is super exciting, you guys. I want you to drop your comments. Here it is over here. Drop your comments down in the chat below. And we already have some comments that have been submitted to me by members who are in the Facebook group. And also, if you're on my mailing list, I've had somebody email me a question that they want me to address today. But basically, this is an Ask Me Anything live. And so you get to ask me anything. And I'm Jodi Carlton, and I am an adult autism spectrum Asperger, some of you still call it, expert. I've been working with autism and Aspergers for well over 10 years. And I basically have a coaching program, and I do a lot of free coaching and education across different social media platforms. And we also have private coaching available to you. As a matter of fact, I just started a TikTok. Where is it? It's right here. A TikTok channel a couple weeks ago, or last week. And so on that channel, I'm just sharing tips about sensory issues and all sorts of different relationship stuff. So if you're on TikTok, you can hop on there. I'm also on Instagram, which is in the description here. It's Asperger's Relationships without the underscore. So join me there. And then a lot of you have found me because you found me here on YouTube. Whoops, wrong thing. I got to learn how to do this here. You found me on YouTube, one of my videos here, and you've come over and joined my other groups. So I'm going to try to keep an eye on the comments here. My assistant Amber is also helping me out to make sure I don't miss anything. So the first question that I'm going to address today, and I'm going to copy and paste it here. If I can figure out how to do that. Is from someone who's an anonymous person. She didn't want me to include her name, but this is a person in my my Facebook group. And here we go. Let me hit, oh, you know what? It's too many. Okay, you know what, you guys? I can't copy and paste. It's too much. I got a learning curve here. So I'm just going to read this question to you guys. So it's basically about masking. And she says, my partner, or she says, I'd like to ask about masking in high functioning Aspies. It's so hard to make people and even therapists understand that the man that they see and assume that they know is not the man that I am dealing with at home. So I want to talk to you guys about what this thing masking is. This is a question that comes up a good bit. And so one of the thoughts about masking is that it's this way of hiding those of you who are on the spectrum, and I'm talking to both you and neurotypical partners. Neurotypical means you're not on the spectrum. So there's this idea that masking is a way of hiding the real self, and so that nobody really knows who who I really am if I'm on the spectrum. And so what this member is asking about is, how do I deal with the fact that I get one person at home and somebody else in public who's entirely different? And so what I like to point out is, although this can seem really frustrating to partners, we all mask, you guys. Okay, now I want to just stay with me here. We all mask. I usually call it wearing different hats, having different personalities, because depending on the situation or the context that we're in, we wear different masks. So, for example, I am a professional relationship coach for those of you who are in autism spectrum relationships or you're on the spectrum. And so when I'm talking to you, I have one personality, I have one mask, but I'm also a mother. You know, I've got an 18-year-old who is on the spectrum, by the way, and I have a 14-year-old who has sensory processing challenges and is not on the spectrum, but he has a lot of other stuff that goes along with it. So I'm a mom. And when I am interacting with them, I have a totally different mask. I'm also a daughter. I have a mother who's 75 years old who lives with us. I have been a partner. I'm not currently in a relationship, but I was a wife for 19 years to a man who I eventually realized was on the spectrum, unfortunately, after our divorce. I then also was in a relationship for 2.5 years with another man who was on the spectrum, and autism was not the reason why we went our separate ways. We had other deal breakers. So when I'm a partner, I'm also wearing a different mask. Um, there's all sorts of different masks that we wear. It's an important coping skill to be able to put on these different faces in the different situations we're in. We actually teach children how to do this. Children who are on the spectrum, we teach them. Carol Gray came up with the program Social Stories years ago, and it's a program that's used by a lot of behavioral therapists that work with kids on how to behave appropriately in different situations. Now, to get to your question, though, I don't want to minimize what you're experiencing, because it is true that at home, oftentimes, the masks that take so much effort to basically be appropriate in certain situations, those come off, and we just we're ourselves at home. And guys, we have to actually look at ourselves on this one, because I know that my children and my immediate family are more likely to see a side of me that the public is never going to see. You know, if I ever lose my cool, it's typically going to be at home in my inner circle. That's my safe space. That's where I'm able to just kind of let go and be. And that is normal. That is normal human behavior to basically show that side of us that is not in control of our emotions sometimes, that loses it. That happens more at home. And other people don't see that. And that's not manipulative, it's not controlling, it's not in some way bad, but it can be really stressful when you live with somebody who is really, really struggling. And at home, there's a lot more emotional uh, angst and dysregulation and stress, but then they're put together more in public. Those of you who are on the spectrum, I know you can relate to this. The people in my life who have been on the spectrum, and there have been many in my personal life, have talked about how it's very, they put on this appropriate face out in public and then come home and just fall apart. So it's a lot to deal with, and so it's hard for both of you. And I would say to those of you who are neurotypical to Give your partner some grace about this because um, it's it's a lot. I see this with parents who have kids on the spectrum, and their kids go to school, and the teachers are like, "Yeah, they're doing great," and then the kids come home and have huge meltdowns, and it looks like a behavioral tantrum, but it's not. It's just an overload. Okay, I see a question here. Um, you're saying what coping skills can an autistic introduce when in a social situation? So I think you're saying, so if I'm autistic, what coping skills can I use in a social situation? Okay, so uh, I would recommend that number one, you really kind of pay attention to know what you're going into. So planning ahead is really important. So know ahead of time what that social situation is going to be like. Know who's going to be there. People that are safe people to talk to. Make sure you plan for yourself and exit if you need it. For example, I was working with a couple, the married couple, and he's on the spectrum, she's not. And so they liked to go have dinner with other couples, but he would get really, really worn out very quickly from the social interaction. And she was a real extrovert and loved it. And so she wanted to hang out longer than he did. So what we worked out together is that they would drive separately, especially if it was a local place to go. They would go separately and agree that when he got to his limit that he would leave. And they would just explain to the other couple, he's kind of maxed out and needs to go home. And they both had to learn to be okay with that and to be able to communicate to their friends, hey, we're okay with it. And as long as they were okay with it, their friends would be okay with it. Now, when you're in a situation and it's a social situation and you're feeling overwhelmed, give yourself give yourself space if you need to. Step away, go to the bathroom and give your body some sensory input because sometimes it's very calming to put pressure on your joints. This may sound nuts, but it's really helpful. Occupational therapists do this, teach this all the time. Um, do push-ups against the stall wall in the bathroom to put joints pressure on your joints. It's very calming. Go in and take some deep breaths. Count to 10 as you breathe in. Count to it's these are just basic um, strategies to help your brain regulate and calm down because what happens when you're in a social situation and you start to get stressed out is your brain goes into fight or flight mode. And so it's like it feels like you're in danger. So this causes your heart rate to speed up and your respiration to speed up and you get sweaty palms and you start to feel kind of panicky. So you want to basically tell your body, we're okay. Everything's okay. And so one of the things you can do is practice breathing to slow your heart rate down and to give yourself space away from the situation, even if it's just for a few seconds, for like 30 seconds. Those are some quick tips. Another thing is if you have a safe person that you can that's going to be there with you, tell that person ahead of time, look, this may stress me out. Coordinate a hand signal or some kind of signal or a code word to let them know that you're feeling stressed, that you need to leave. You maybe have different levels of stress. I need to step outside could be one code word, or I really need to leave could be another code word, and work on that ahead of time. Okay. Hi, Nathan. Good to see you. So, Nathan says, I'm an extreme extrovert, but even I sometimes need to leave a formal setting after about 2 hours to feel safe. And let me just say, 2 hours is a long time for a lot of people. I'm an extrovert too, Nathan, and I'm not on the spectrum. But in some settings, after 2 hours, I'm feeling overwhelmed and I'm ready to go. Or I at least need to step away and just kind of be on my own for a few minutes and just kind of take a break from interacting with others. Um, Nathan's also saying, like if it's a work party, if it's a personal party or a church party, I could be there all day. And you bring up a good point because it really does depend on where and who you're around and where you are. So that goes back to Mikey, what you were asking. Um, I'm saying know in advance what you're going into and who you're going to be around and whether or not you're likely to feel comfortable in that situation. And so plan ahead for that. All right. So while I'm waiting, if you guys have any other questions. Oh, hi, Taylor. Good to see you. Oh, thank you. So Taylor actually had a question, and I'm going to read it to you guys. Let me pull it over here because I can't put something this long in the comments. That's frustrating. So Taylor's saying, my partner can get hypersensitive to too much human interaction and therefore gets stressed after a certain amount of socializing. This actually really goes along with what Mikey said. He's or even just being just someone being in the same house or room as him. I understand this about him, but how do I not get my feelings hurt by feeling like he doesn't want to be around me, or he's done or when he's done? Since she says, for instance, if we're on vacation or a long road trip where we're kind of permanently with each other for extended periods of time, after a while, I think to myself, he'd rather just be alone versus with you, talking to myself, and is being disingenuous after he's reached a certain point of stress. She says, I know this is what we call making false meaning, but I can't see it a different way sometimes, and I take it personally. Okay, so this is about stage 3 of communication. So those of you who are familiar with my coaching program, some of you have been through my communication transformation program already. What this is all about, there are 4 stages of communication. And Taylor, your question is about stage 3. The first stage is what we bring to all of our interactions. It's all of our values, our expectations, our goals, our history, our relationship history, our personal history. All that's coming into our interactions with our partner. Stage 2 is how we actually interact. And so Taylor's saying, okay, we're in the car together, we've chit-chatted, or we're in a social situation. So they're communicating, and how we interact, there are lots and lots of that's the stage that's usually focused on in counseling, if you've been to counseling. And counselors and therapists, which I am a trained therapist, you guys, miss stage 1, what we bring to it. Most of the focus goes into how we actually interact with each other. But what is really missed a lot of times is stage 3 and stage 4. Stage 3 is about the meaning that we assign to an interaction, the meaning we take away. And this is where we get so tripped up in our relationships because we take away this meaning. Taylor's being very, very vulnerable and honest by saying, I take it personally. So what she's recognizing is that her partner, who's on the spectrum, gets maxed out by just even being in the same space. And that has to do with energy. So most individuals on the spectrum are introverted, which means they recharge their energy, their emotional, social, relational energy by having some time to themselves. Extroverts, I'm an extrovert. We recharge all of that by being around other people. So for someone who's on the spectrum, they're going to max out. You're going to max if you're on the spectrum and you're watching this, you are going to reach your limit. Like Nathan was saying, I reach a limit when I'm at parties or if I'm in a work function. You are going to reach your limit. And so Taylor, he just being in your space, there's still an energy exchange there. Even when you're just riding in a car, it's really different than when you're riding in the car by yourself. When you're by yourself, you can sing and you can talk and you can listen to the radio and you can be quiet. You can do whatever you want. But when someone else is in that space with you, even if you're not interacting, there's still an energy exchange. There's still a social responsibility to that other person. There's a relationship responsibility to that other person or other people. So after a while, his battery's going to drain and he's going to need to just kind of shut off. But Taylor, that has nothing to do with you, and it has nothing to do with how much he cares about you. So that stage 3 meaning that you assign to it, when that little voice in your head says, he'd rather just be alone than with me, he doesn't really want to hang out with me, this is the narrative that you are taking from that exchange that is completely missing the mark. You're missing, you're misunderstanding, you're assigning, you're it's a misattribution, the meaning of him needing a little bit of space. It has nothing to do with how much he cares for you. And so you have to consciously be aware of the narrative that you are telling yourself, and you have to call yourself out and say, you know what? I mean, you even said in your question, I realize it, but you truly have to challenge that narrative and say, okay, this has been my old narrative, but now I understand that this is not about me. And the reason why that's really important is because stage 4 of communication is how we remember and how we recall our interactions and our relationship. So if you are taking away a narrative from an interaction that isn't quite right, then your narrative about your relationship is also going to be completely off the mark. But this is how you begin to develop the meaning for your relationship, how you're remembering and how you're recalling these interactions. And so your definition of your relationship is influenced by all of these individual interactions and the meaning that you take away from it. Um, Nathan is saying when we don't validate another's feelings, okay, I think this is a different question. So I want to just kind of close that one that Taylor said. So guys, I want you to really pay attention, and this is for those of you who are on the spectrum and also neurotypical partners, because those of you on the spectrum can also absolutely misunderstand the meaning of your partner. And stage 2 of communication is where I teach you guys to learn how to get, there's a script that I actually teach to help you know how to interact in a way that you confirm and clarify what your partner actually means. If you want more information about the communication program, go to the website and check it out. Okay, Nathan. Nathan says when we don't validate another's feelings, is that because we truly don't understand the other person's perspective, or is it because we're not paying attention? Good question. It's both, Nathan. It's both. So sometimes we really aren't paying attention. My daughter sent me a TikTok meme or little video the other day, and she's like, it said something about, when you talk to your mom and she's, and it showed this mom going, yeah, yeah. And she was giving me a hard time because she was basically saying, Mom, when I talk to you and you're on your phone, you're not hearing a word I'm saying, and I'm just nodding. This is true for all of us. If we don't stop and pay attention to what someone's saying, we can't validate what they're saying. We can't affirm them because we don't really hear them. And this is a breakdown in stage 2, how we interact. And I want you all to stop and ask yourselves, have you been in a conversation recently with your partner or with anybody else? And while they were talking, you were thinking about what you were going to say. You were thinking about your response. You were thinking about how you felt about what they were saying. Because if you've done that, which, be honest, because I know I've done it and I know you've all done it, you're not really hearing what they're saying right then because you're in your own head. You're in your own head thinking about what you want to say back or how you feel about it. So what I teach you guys in stage 2 is how to attend and listen and then reflect back what you've heard, summarize, go back over, okay, this is what I'm hearing you say. And then you've actually heard your partner and you can affirm or you can say, okay, you may not agree. This is really critical because a lot of couples get into these antagonistic dynamics. And it's hard to say, well, what I heard you say was, especially if you don't agree with it. But here's the thing, guys, you can reflect back to what you're hearing. You can reflect back what you're hearing and say, okay, this is what I heard you say. That doesn't mean you're saying I agree with you or you're right. It just means I actually heard what you said. So, Nathan, we have to attend and listen first in order to validate what was said. And validation, affirmation, is still not agreeing. It's just saying, I hear you. I heard you. That is a critical component of relationship communication. Now, the other piece of this that you said is maybe we don't truly understand the other person's perspective. So there's a couple of parts to that. We can't really understand it if we don't really know what it is. So we first have to attend to it. That's the first part. We have to attend to it. And then we have to ask, if we don't understand, we have to ask clarifying questions. Now, so that we truly are clear on what they're saying. Now, we still may not understand it, meaning we don't agree with it or it doesn't make sense to us. That's okay. We're totally separate human beings. You're not meant to understand everything about how each of you feel and think. That doesn't make any sense. As human beings, we're not going to understand each other. But what we need to do is at least say, okay, this is what I'm hearing you say, and make sure I'm actually hearing you correctly. And then we can respond and say, okay, you know what? I get that this is how you feel. And we never can take away someone else's opinions, thoughts, or feelings from them. Other people have totally different perspectives and points of view on things. They have a right to that. Our partner has a right to that. And we need to acknowledge their perspective and point of view. But then we get to reply and say, hey, here's mine. Here's mine. I acknowledge yours, but here's mine. All right. You're welcome, Nathan. Okay. So then also, Nathan, you also said, nope. Let's see. No, you didn't. I see something from M. You said, let's see. I'm in a long distance relationship with someone who's on the spectrum. Sorry, you guys, my nose always starts itching when I start talking. I'm in a long distance relationship with someone who's on the spectrum. We have not yet met due to travel restrictions. Communication is very hard, but I'm trying to be understanding. Any advice? Let me just say, okay, long distance relationships are already extremely hard for everybody, whether you're neurotypical or autistic. Long distance relationships are hard. So communication is extremely important in a long distance relationship. So the only kind of long distance relationship that I would say is that even can possibly work is when you frequently are texting and interacting. FaceTimes are important because that's where you hear phone calls, FaceTime, you need to be able to hear someone's voice and see their face in order to really read nonverbal cues. Those of you on the spectrum have even more difficulty than neurotypicals reading nonverbal cues. So much can be misinterpreted in texts or emails. There's so many different ways to receive a text or an email, and this is why the face-to-face is really important. And it's important that you do that so that you can, in the moment, clarify what you're hearing, make sure you're understanding your partner very clearly, and that you can reflect back and say, hey, is this what you meant? You've got to ask lots of questions in a long distance relationship, and you really have to fill each other in on your everyday lives and the moment to moment, because otherwise there are huge gaps that are missing when you're in a long distance relationship. There are gaps of time, and it's hard to know what's going on in your partner's life. So there needs to be a lot of sharing, and just a lot of communication about what's happening in the moment to moment. Otherwise, I don't, it's so difficult to make them work without those open lines of communication. Um, okay, my assistant is telling me that she added a comment that came in via Messenger. Um, and so let me just ask, is the one that I just covered, Amber, is that the one that you popped in here? If you'll just let me know. Um, those of you who are here, what other questions do you have for me? I can just talk on and on. But if you have questions live, you can submit them if you want it to be anonymous. Um, you know what? We need to have a method for you guys to do that live if you want to submit an anonymous question. So in my next live, I will have instructions for you to do that. This is my first one, and I'm playing it by ear. Um, M, you're welcome. I'm not sure if that's your real name, but that you're welcome. Okay, so my assistant is telling me. Oh, okay, I see the question that she has added for me. So this is a question from another one of our members from the Facebook group, and also someone who's been in the communication transformation coaching group. So I have a self-study program, communication transformation, and I also go through it live with you, either just you or you with your partner in a 6-week coaching group. That won't be open again for another couple of months, but the self-study is always available. Okay, so the question that came in from that member is, I'm watching on YouTube, so hi, and my partner and I have had a bad breakdown in communication. I feel like she isn't putting in the effort to understand me. Okay, so I'm going to just say to this member, because like I just told you, he and his wife are in the communication transformation program, and they're also getting some private coaching from my colleague Debbie King, who is an autism relationship specialist. And I just want to say that it is normal to backslide once you've started gaining momentum. You guys have gained so much momentum, and you've made so much progress through private coaching and through the communication transformation program. But it took years. And I want all of you to listen to me, because some of you are coming here. This is brand new to you. You're not sure where to start. Some of you have been familiar with this for a while. Some of you have been watching a lot of my videos in the Straight Talk library. Some of you have been participating in the Facebook group for a while. It takes time. And as you learn about this relationship you're in, as those of you who are what we would call at the extreme end of the spectrum. Some people don't like the term high functioning. It's what we used to call Aspergers. But those of you who are on the spectrum, but you're in relationships, you've got college degrees. A lot of people wouldn't really have a clue that you're on the spectrum. You have been in relationships, a lot of you, for decades. I have retirees coming to me saying, "Oh, we're just not figuring this out." So it's taken decades for you to develop these dynamics that you have. It's not going to change overnight. But what I want you to really pay attention to, think about when you're climbing a mountain, a really steep mountain, and you're going way to the top. Occasionally, a lot of what we focus on is we're looking up and we see how much farther we have to go. And it looks, or maybe you're running a 5K. My son just ran a 5K last weekend. And you're thinking about how much farther you have to go. But it's important sometimes to look behind you. If you're going up that mountain, look behind you to see how far you've come. Remind yourself how far you've come. When you're running that 4K, remind yourself how many miles you've already run. So in this process of understanding this autism spectrum relationship you're in, these dynamics, know that you're gonna fall back. You're gonna fall back into old habits and old routines. Sometimes you need a break from all the putting so much attention to it, because it takes a lot of effort, mental, emotional effort, to really change up these dynamics and patterns that you've had. Sometimes you need a break and you slide back into those old habits. That's normal. And it doesn't mean that you still aren't making a ton of progress. So when that happens, I want you both to just take a breath, take a break, step away from it, and then come back. Because you can't unknow what you know. Once you've learned about this, and once you see and you learn and you see the progress, you can't not see it ever again. It's there. Nathan said, congrats on the 5K. Well, it wasn't me, it was my son. So, kudos to him. But thank you. I'll let him know. Taylor says, great point to keep in mind. And King Life, I guess you're congratulating my son too. So again, all of you who are here, who follow my channel, who are in my Facebook group, all that you're learning and all that you're applying to your relationship dynamics, don't be discouraged. You've been who you are, you've been in the relationships you're in for years. And this is new. This is new stuff. Some of you who are on the spectrum have realized, or some of you were diagnosed when you were younger, so you may have known that part for a while, but some of you have not known at all. And you're in your 30s or 40s or 50s. Some of you are in your 60s. So it's going to take some time. Give yourself some grace. Give your partner some grace. And when you feel overloaded and maxed out and you're backsliding into older habits and routines, just take a break. Take a break and don't stress out that it's all for naught, because it's not. It's not. You are still making progress. Okay. What other questions do you guys have for me? A lot of times on my Facebook Live, this goes about an hour, but this is first time here on YouTube, so I wasn't sure what to expect. Anybody else have something for me? I'll talk a little bit more about while I'm waiting to see if anybody has a question. So if you are joining in and you didn't see the beginning of the YouTube video today, there are quite a few resources that we have for you at Spectrum Relationships. We do have hourly private coaching, and then I work with folks in a 2-month intensive. And so you have to apply to work with me. And I basically move into your relationship, you guys. We're like on calls, Zoom calls, 2 or 3 times a week, and messaging. And I want to get like right in the middle of your relationship. And I want to know what's going on so I can help translate right there in the moment for you. A lot of my neurotypical folks love the messaging. My autistic folks use it. Some use it a lot, some don't. But that's also an option that's available to you. I only take on a couple of clients at a time in my VIP, my private, not my VIP, but my 2-month intensive. So if you're interested in that, make sure you get on a consultation with me so we can get you on the wait list. Monica, hi, good to see you. Monica says, hi, Jodi. I'm so glad you have these videos. Thanks for your dedication with ASD. You are welcome. You guys are my people, okay? I'm neurotypical, but my whole world is filled with folks on the spectrum, starting with my daughter. She just turned 18, you guys, and she's going to college this fall, and I can't even grasp this, okay? So this is where autism first came into my world that I realized. But since then, I've seen my entire family tree. I see it in my family. I know I was met her dad. I've realized that her dad is on the spectrum, and so we're all learning and growing, and it's just, I'm surrounded by folks on the spectrum, and you guys are my people, and those of you who are neurotypical in relationships with folks on the spectrum, you're my people too. And sometimes folks on the spectrum have asked me, what makes you qualified to be a coach because you're not autistic? And my answer to that is, well, if not me, who? Because nobody's going to be both autistic and neurotypical. And so I've at least learned so much about the autistic brain and way of thinking and relating, and I've learned how to translate. So that is, that's what I'm invested in doing. Mikey's still here. So you said, I've never dated, Uh-oh, where'd it go? I've never dated before, but I would like to ask a girl out, and I'm autistic. I find it hard to recognize flirting and what people's intentions are by their facial expressions. Any tips to recognize it? Yeah, so this is a really common question asked by folks on the spectrum who are single. So, something that I would really recommend is to watch movies and study the facial expression. Make it your project to study facial expressions in movies or theater productions, even if you can watch them on Netflix, so you can start to associate what certain facial expressions mean. Movies and the cinema, they accentuate, they literally show, they'll zoom in on people's faces to show you what they're experiencing, and then that will go right along with the scene and how they react. So study it. And if there are people that are in your life, your family or friends that you trust, ask them for some help with this too. And you can even say, what does that facial expression mean? Um, you can also there are some really good YouTube videos here that you can search on what different facial expressions mean. So, but one of the things you really have to do is look at people's faces. You have to actually look at them, and I know that can be really uncomfortable for those of you on the spectrum. But look at their facial expressions and ask people. You know, get more comfortable with asking and saying, I'm not really sure what you mean. And you're talking about flirting. So this is harder sometimes because women, girls, can be a lot more subtle about how they flirt. So you're going to want to watch, like I said, watch chick flicks, watch shows where women are being flirty in the movie, and study that. Um, you might have a co-pilot, like a co-pilot meaning somebody to go with you, and ask them, is that my daughter, I told you, is 18. She struggles with the same thing. And so, I encourage her, sometimes if she's with a friend, or sometimes I've been with her and I'm like, that boy's flirting with you. And she's like, God. And I'll say, no, no, no. And I'll explain to her what he did and what he said and how he used his body to show that he was interested. And so ask somebody who you can trust to go with you when you're in a social situation where someone might be flirting with you, and ask that person to help you, for that to be kind of their job, to be there to help you translate what's actually happening in that moment. Um, all right, I hope that was helpful. Nathan says, great questions, keep them coming. M. Prop says, what realistic goals can we have as a couple when it comes to improving communication as a couple? Assuming complete change of my partner is unreasonable. Okay, yeah. So first of all, complete change of your partner is unreasonable, just as much as complete change of you is unreasonable. We come into this world with a certain set of traits, um, hardwiring in our brain, personality, characteristics, DNA, all of that determines so much about us. Now, what's reasonable? This question is asked me, like, how much can we expect change? And the number one variable is whether both of you recognize that there are difficulties and are motivated to fix it. If only one of you recognizes that there are challenges in the relationship, or if only one of you is motivated to fix it, that doesn't have a very good outcome prognosis. But of the couples that but let me say, there is a caveat there. I have had individual partners, neurotypical partners, come and work with me and go through the communication program and really, really get a lot of enlightenment about what's happening, the breakdown in the communication, and then start to change up the way they are communicating with their partner. And oftentimes that unwillingness to participate is a defensiveness, fear of criticism, fear of being attacked, fear of being blamed. And when a neurotypical partner kind of drops all of that and comes in and learns about how to communicate and then starts implementing that, I've had autistic partners go, what are you doing there? You know what? This is different. I want to know more about this. And I've had quite a few neurotypical partners come through the program, and then their autistic partner, who was not on board at all, didn't even want to acknowledge autism, now saying, I want to go through this too, because it they recognize the changes. So really, realistically, it just depends on the motivation to be together and to be in the relationship. And everybody's different. And I'm not going to mislead you guys into thinking I have some magic potion that fixes all relationships. I don't. As a matter of fact, I've walked some people through the clarity that their relationship really needs to end. And we all need to know at what point it's over. And that's very tough. I've been through that myself. That's tough. And that's not what I want for any of you. Um, but this is sometimes the reality of it. All right, so let me look at your questions. Okay, King Lifetail says, Mikey boy, definitely can relate to feeling like I miss those signals until it is a little too late. Yeah, so you can relate to that. Study the women, guys. Study them. Make it your project. Taylor says, is it reasonable to ask him to help me out of a rut or a bad mood if I'm finding it hard to get there myself? He tends to go away when things feel negative, but sometimes I need him to come into my space. Okay, this is a good question. We all really kind of have to be responsible for our emotional stuff. And I'm going to just be honest with you. This is probably something for your girlfriends, um, especially if he tends to not feel comfortable with those negative emotions. Um, he may be more the person to go to if you have a problem to solve. Like if there's something that he can engage in problem solving mode. Men in general like to problem solve for their partners, their female partners. But when it comes to emotional stuff, um, this is not just an autistic thing. And I'm not saying folks on the spectrum don't experience emotions, because you very much do. Some of you have a much wider range of emotions than others. But when we're in a bad place emotionally, our girlfriends are typically the ones we need to go to. The women, we're hardwired to be the social, emotional glue of the culture. And so most men, spectrum or not, struggle to know how to handle that emotional struggle, those emotional challenges. Guys, if you're listening to this though, and your women come to you and they're just sad or depressed, what you need to do is just label and acknowledge the emotion. I'm just going to give you the script right now. Instead of trying to fix it, some of you are trying to minimize it to make it go away. You're like, oh, it'll be fine. You'll be fine. You'll feel better tomorrow. That's minimizing it. Or it's not that bad. That's minimizing it. That will get you in trouble. She will not like that. All you need to do is say, wow, I'm hearing that you're sad. Am I right about that? You may not know. Those of you who are autistic may not be able to label that emotion, but you can start picking emotion words until you get it right. You can be like, are you frustrated? Am I hearing that you're angry? You know, and I want to understand what most women need is to feel understood in those moments. So just start asking about how she feels and then say, wow, that must be hard. And you can say, is there anything I can do for you? But Taylor, back to your question, if he's open to it, you can certainly tell him, I just need to kind of tell you how I'm feeling. I did that one time with the man I was with for the 2.5 years. When the pandemic hit, I'm an empath, so I really pick up on the energy, the emotional energy of people. And it was overwhelming to me. And I told him one day, I said, I just need to cry. I need to cry. I need to just get it out. And he was kind of like, okay. He didn't really know what to do, but I did. I just had an ugly cry. And I told him it's what I needed. And so he just sat there with me and listened to me cry. And then he's just like, are you good? And I was like, I'm good. So sometimes we just need to say, okay, this is what I need. Spell it out. Don't expect your autistic partner to know. what you need. Spell it out. All right. You are in Melbourne, I'm just going to call you M. So cool. I had a couple of clients in New Zealand over there next door to you. So I'm so glad you're here. Taylor says, okay, and also an ask if I'm okay, so I know he cares, and that gets me talking easier and eventually feeling better. So you're saying he will ask if you're okay, and that helps you. Yeah, yeah. So you're okay. I get what you're doing. You're giving instructions to the folks on the call. Yeah, ask if your partner's okay. That's a way of affirming. Nathan, you were talking about how do we affirm our partner's feelings if asking if they're okay is a way to do it, because that does communicate that you care. Um, all right. Hi, Jay. Jay says, would you explain the difference between someone on the spectrum's brain and a neurotypical brain and how it affects the relationship? Whew, that's a big question. Where do I start? Um, so basically, the neurotypical and the autistic brain are most different in how we process sensory information. So I'm going through this on TikTok right now, you guys, what sensory processing is. So the autistic brain pretty much always has a different way of processing sensory information. So this is how we see, what we see, smell, taste, touch, hear, the way our body is moving in space. And pretty much all autistic brains are either oversensitive to sensations or undersensitive to sensations. And there's an unlimited combination here because one of you may be oversensitive to sound but undersensitive to taste, meaning, you can eat spicy things that other people are like, oh, whereas the next person may be really oversensitive to taste and wants everything really bland because just even ketchup tastes like fire to you. But you're really loud when you talk because sounds don't bother you. Infinite combination. But the key is the oversensitivity and the undersensitivity. So that overwhelms the autistic brain constantly, puts the autistic brain in a state of fight or flight, which is our panic response because your body is being bombarded by these sensations, or you're not getting enough of a sensation to register it. Like your body may not tell you you're cold until you're freezing. So this is a lot for your brain to handle. So that's one thing. And then neurotypical brains can actually have sensory processing issues and not be autistic, but it's not as common. It's definitely possible though. Um, one of the other major differences is the social relational interchange. So a neurotypical brain doesn't. Some other folks here were commenting on not being able to recognize nonverbal cues. So the neurotypical brain is automatically logging. It's observing and logging and storing information from birth about what certain nonverbal cues mean. So, what certain facial expressions mean, facial expressions, all these different things. What body language means, like, am I stepping in closer to you? Am I moving away? Am I turning body away from you? The different emphasis on words in sentences. So, if I say a sentence and I put an emphasis on a different word, it totally changes the meaning. The neurotypical brain, I can't talk, is constantly logging all of this information so that it can be used to interpret behavior. The autistic brain does not log all this information as efficiently, and it varies for every person, but it doesn't log it as efficiently. So you have to be a lot more conscientious of paying attention to and learning those nonverbal cues, and even verbal, that spoken cues. Whereas the neurotypical brain, it's just automatic. Neurotypical brain doesn't have to work hard. The autistic, you guys have to, or I'm assuming that, well, Jay, I don't know if you're autistic or not, but those of you who are autistic have to make a conscious effort to log and learn that those nonverbal and verbal spoken. This is why I'm always saying that you speak different languages. That it's literally like you're speaking different languages because you use language, you interpret language differently because of that logging that's stored there in the brain. Um, some of you have differences in terms of how what your emotional range is, the emotions that you can experience and relate to. Those are kind of some of the top three that are differences. So I hope that's helpful, Jay. Um, all right, guys, we got to I'm going to go for an hour here, which is about 3 more minutes. So let me see what you guys are saying here. Nathan says, thanks. I asked my wife to be assertive because that helps her get less emotionally drained. She's doing so much better at that. Yes, assertive. Just say what you mean. Those of you who are neurotypical. My autistic folks are constantly saying, please just say it. The neurotypical folks, we tend to be passive. We tiptoe around what we want and what we want to say. That's not what your autistic partners want from you. Your autistic partners want you to be just really clear, put it out there, say what you need. Um, Nathan says, so true, Jodi, on Taylor's comments. Men don't necessarily go towards the fire when they feel pushed away. Absolutely. And you like the woman feeling understood. Yes, yes. Yeah, a lot of people have the misconception that folks on the spectrum are, just jerks and don't care. Not true. Not true. There's a difference between just not understanding and not recognizing what your needs are. Those are, neurotypical partners, and not caring. Somebody who just really doesn't care, that's not autism. That's another layer altogether. That's another personality issue altogether. Folks on the spectrum care a lot. Sometimes they just don't recognize how. They don't know how to care, how to show you they care. Let's see. Let me scroll through here. Survival brain, if you understand. Yeah. Nathan's saying you're saying survival brain, if I understood you correctly. Yeah, the survival brain, that's the fight or flight response. That's when any of us kick into fight or flight because we're overwhelmed, threatened, in any way, our anxiety levels go up. That's our primitive survival brain, and everybody kicks into that at some point. Joe's saying, why don't NTs have to make an effort in our direction? Oh, yes, they do. Oh, yes, they do. And if all the NTs in my private Facebook coaching group will tell you that I absolutely hold them accountable 100%. So, absolutely, it is very important that neurotypical partners make an effort to understand their autistic partners and what they're bringing to it themselves. So, Joe, what I said at the beginning of the video, I talked about my communication stages, the 4 stages. The first one is what we bring to our relationship and to our interactions. Both partners are bringing relationship history with each other, with former partners, with our families of origin. Oh, sometimes there's trauma there for neurotypical partners. There's abusive backgrounds, there's family cultures that are dysfunctional. All of that is being brought to the relationship, and it is both of you are bringing this stuff from your past. And also your own personality traits, your conflict styles, your attachment styles. You are both accountable. Both of you are accountable for understanding yourself and what you're bringing to it, and then also learning about your partner. Neither one of you is supposed to just come alongside the other and adjust and adapt. No, you're 2 separate human beings. And you have to learn about yourself first and then your partner and come alongside each other. So I'm glad you asked that, Joe, because you got me fired up on that question, because I do not subscribe to the idea that autistics have to do all the work. No, absolutely not. Taylor, love the explanation. Since we're so different, it's a deal break. Is it a deal breaker to get defensive in conflict, even if you're trying really hard to be understanding? Being defensive is a normal human response, but what we have to learn to do is to acknowledge that we're feeling defensive and stop and listen to clarify what our partner is saying. Feeling defensive is normal. Everybody's going to feel defensive. Also, what's important to do is to learn how to interact in a way where we're not being critical of our partners, because that automatic you're going to shut your partner down if we come across with harsh startups. We come at our partner with, why do you just, how come you can't, why do you always, all these ways of approaching our partner. They're going to shut down and be defensive. So that's also back to what's our part. We have to learn how we're contributing to the problem to create a defensive response in our partner. If our partner's constantly creating a defensive response in us, we have to acknowledge, admit, okay, I'm feeling defensive, but let me see if I can hear what you're saying. Acknowledge the emotion. It's normal to have emotions. Okay, Carolyn, hi, good to see you. I have trouble when my NT husband points things out that I missed or need to improve. I take this too personally and overanalyze what he's saying. What would you recommend I do to not overreact? Well, I mean, I would just say thank you for your opinion, and you don't have to own what anybody's opinion is of you ever. I know when it's your partner, we want our partners to like us and approve of us, and we want our partners to feel good about us, and it hurts to get that feedback from them, but we don't ever have to own any of it. And just because our partner feels that way doesn't mean that we have to feel bad about ourselves. And a lot of times with autistic partners, you're saying you're autistic, so you're saying my NT husband. It goes both ways. So whoever's doing the pointing out is giving unsolicited advice, which all of us, you guys, need to learn not to do. But we don't ever have to own it. We just need to acknowledge it. We can say, hey, I hear what you're saying. This is what I'm hearing you say. Did I get that right? Okay, thank you for your opinion. I'll take that into consideration. But we don't ever want to put our value, our worth, our abilities or inabilities in the hands of somebody else. We own that. And so just remind yourself, okay, he's got an opinion. Everybody's got an opinion. But I don't have to buy into it, and it's no reflection on who I am as a person. And if anybody is trying to make you feel bad about who you are as a person, that's a problem. And that's not an autistic, neurotypical thing. That's a personality thing that's a problem. We all can trip up occasionally and say things that are mean, but there's a difference in that and it being a pattern. I hope that was helpful, Carolyn. All right, just a couple more, you guys, and I got to call it a night. So, Carolyn, you're saying you take it personally because you think, oh gosh, I did something wrong again. Yeah, just listen to what he's saying, and okay, let me clarify what you're saying. I'll take that into consideration. Mikey boy, you're in the UK. You're not really into chick flicks and would struggle to fit it in. Are there any other ways in which I can find out more about how girls flirt? You're saying you're not into chick flicks, but you don't have to watch it for entertainment. It's like research. Watch it for research. But as far as how girls flirt, ask women, interview them, ask girls, people that are safe, people that you feel comfortable with. Ask friends, do you have a sister? Do you have a mom? Do you have somebody that I can ask? How do you flirt? Ask them, how do you flirt? What do you do when you flirt? Interview people. Make it your research project. Taylor, thank you. Nathan said, thanks so much for sharing. All right, you guys are talking to each other. Okay, well, we're going to call it a day, and I will be back here in 2 weeks, you guys. So I look forward to talking to you then. Please come on over to the Facebook group. Join in the discussion there. That's pretty much daily. Come on over to the website, which is, where is it? Over here on my channel. You can actually message me and my team there if you have a question for this live in 2 weeks that you would rather post anonymously. You can just send it to us there, and we'll pop it in the chat anonymously. Cheers to you too, and I will see you guys in a couple weeks. Bye.